Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here and welcome back to the workbench for today's unboxing. Today I'm taking a look at this, the Hobby 2000 Hawker Hurricane Mk1a Late in 1/72nd scale. So join me as I take a look inside the box and see what is included. So, on the front of the box we've got this rather attractive artwork of the Hurricane. I quite like that we've got sort of the paint scheme sort of artwork on the top and then the sort of line drawing behind. That's kind of what caught my eye on the shelf, so I picked it up. On this long edge here we've got some information about the actual aircraft and the pilots who flew them. In particular we've got this information on this side about Sir Douglas Bader. And just to the right of this information, we've got the paint scheme for the aircraft that he flew. Flipping round to the other side, we've got some information about the model and an age rating over here. The short edges of the box don't feature any other information other than what we already know. And on this side, you can see that I've got a price tag of $17.99, but I'll talk more about the price in a little bit. The product code here is 72030. Before I get inside the box, the back has absolutely nothing on it. So let's get this one open. And as usual, we're going to take a look at the instructions first. So on this sort of, well, I think it's an A4 page. It is, yeah, A4 page, which folds out. So this side of your A4 page, we've got a sprue map, which is really handy. It tells us down here that we've got a painting mask set included, so I'll have a look at that in a minute, and then all of the paint colour call-outs. So they've given us the different paint colours, annotated it with a letter, and then given us different selections of paints depending on which brand you prefer. Moving over to the left-hand side, we can see we've got three different paint schemes. One for the aircraft flown by Douglas Bader. We've got another one for Flight Lieutenant Ian Gleed from RAF Exeter. And then we've got another one for Flight Lieutenant Arthur Clowes from RAF Wittering. So there's three different paint schemes there, all printed in colour, which is what I love to see with this sort of paperwork, because it just makes it so much easier to sort of determine what you're going to do. And just looking at the three paint schemes there, I'm probably more tempted to do the RAF Exeter one, because it's got these bigger insignia on the tail here, and it's got this interesting nose sort of cowling piece as well, which makes it stand out a little bit more compared to the other ones. But let me know down in the comments which one do you think I should do, but I am leaning more towards this one at the moment. Turn over the page and we've got our step-by-step instructions. So it doesn't look to be a complicated aircraft to assemble, seeing as there's 7 numbered steps. So we start off with assembling the cockpit parts. Insert the cockpit parts inside the fuselage and add your transfer to the control panel. Join the wings together, and we do have to cut out the gun holes here if you want. There is a little note here which says that the tail wheel needs cutting off and replacing. I presume that is possibly for an earlier version of the aircraft, since this is the Mk.1 Late, but correct me if I'm wrong. Engine cowling comes as sort of 2 different parts. I presume this is because there's different parts out there which can be added to the box for different marks or different versions of the Hurricane. So moving on down, add it all together, do your landing gear legs here, add the landing gear and the air intake, join the prop together. It seems that they come with separate prop blades. I'm not a massive fan of separate prop blades because I always get them facing funny angles, so I would have preferred one piece, but it's something I can live with. And then add the clear parts to the model. So not many steps, fairly simple by the looks of it. The instructions here are a little bit cluttered, but they are easy enough to follow if you take your time to read them. Not entirely sure why we've got these 2 holes here being annotated to be opened up, so I'll just zoom in a bit closer on that. If you can see that, these 2 holes on each side of the wing. I was under the impression that the Mk.2b had extra guns in the wings, and these were the ejector ports for them. So I don't actually think you'd need to do this for a Mk.1, because the Mk.1 had all 8 machine guns. So you had 4 there, 4 there. So the ejector holes would be here. But again, let me know in the comments, am I right, or is there something that I don't know about the Hurricane? So that's the instructions. As mentioned, there is a masking sheet, which is great to see. If you're going to airbrush a kit like this, or even if you're not, Applying these pre-cut masks to your model will help ensure that you get a nice clean paint edge, but on the different parts. So over here we've got the canopy masks, and then here we've got the wheel masks. I think more model kits should come with this included. So if any manufacturers are watching this, please, just a hint, maybe include some more. And before we get onto the plastic parts, let's take a quick look at the transfers. So we've got a very nice transfer sheet, and you can see down here, they are made by Cartograph, and Cartograph, in my opinion, are some of the best transfers out there. So I don't anticipate there being any issues with getting these on the model, but as you can see, we've got a good selection of transfers. We've got all of the different registration codes for each different aircraft. We've even got some smaller stencils, which are printed to a high quality, and there aren't any registration errors. That means that, the red dots are absolutely central inside of those roundels. So yeah, I don't anticipate there being any issues when applying these to the model. And finally, the main event, the plastic parts. The clear parts come in their own little plastic bag, and you can see we've got a little bit of card there that says it's made in Japan. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 grey plastic sprues, although, some of these sprues are absolutely tiny, so it looks like they've been sort of cut away from each other. A lighter grey sprue, which I believe holds the retaining pin for the propeller, and then a clear sprue with the cockpit canopy and the landing lights. So let's have a quick look at the clear one first. The plastic looks to be absolutely crystal clear. There's no real scratches or blemishes. The canopy lines are quite thin. They're not very proud. They are very softly moulded. But thanks to those masks being provided, we shouldn't have any real dramas with getting those lines nice and clearly marked out when we come to paint. I would have liked to have had maybe the option to have the canopy in an open position, but this is what they've decided to do, and I can't really fault that. So let's have a look at the other parts. The small grey plastic sprue with the retaining pin for the prop, that looks fine. There are 4 on there, but I believe you only need 1. We've got the landing gear wheel for the tail, and 2 propeller blades and an engine exhaust. And these are very crisply moulded, and there doesn't seem to be any flash at all on that. So we've got the nose parts, the engine cowling. Like I said earlier, I believe these are interchangeable. So depending on the mark or the variant that Hobby 2000 or the previous designer of the kit, which we'll talk about in a minute, wanted to put in, they'll put in a different sprue. Again, the detail on that is quite good. We've got recessed panel lines and raised details. There isn't any flash that I can see. Nice and crisp. We've got the air intake here, which goes under the nose. Nice little bit of moulded detail on the inside there. And then the nose cones. We've got 2 different nose cones in this, so I'm going to have to check the instructions to make sure I use the right one when I come to build it. There is ever so slightly a little bit of flash here, which will need trimming away, but generally not too bad. We've got a repeat of the little sprue we saw earlier with the propeller blades and the engine exhaust. And then we're on to the wings. So this is the upper wing component. And this is a Hurricane which had all metal wing covering, because you can see that there's no sort of markations for fabric. Like the Airfix Hawker Hurricane, that's got the fabric wings on it, and you can see sort of like the rib sort of spars slightly underneath. But this looks to be the all metal covered later Mk.1. Detail is quite crisp and recessed and raised as appropriate. The lower side then, pretty much exactly the same. And you can see here we have got these 2 little holes. And if we flip over, you can see we've got where we need to drill out for the machine guns. So I'm pretty sure that this will do a Mark 2B aircraft as well. But I'm not entirely sure that these holes should be here. So they might need filling if you're doing just a Mark 1. And then finally, the large sprue with the rest of the components. So as we get closer here, we can see that we've got our tail surfaces, and these are fabric covered, and you can see the sort of spars underneath, so that's really nice. And then on the sides of the aircraft, you can see that as well. That's a really nice representation there. Smaller details for the landing gear there. Control stick, wheels are well reproduced. Landing gear legs, pilot's chair, and sort of the internal areas. No detail as such on the inside of the cockpit there, but in such a small scale it's not always needed. I'm not too fussed about that. The only thing I would say is that the lack of cockpit detail might be a bit noticeable, because some of you all know that I like to have my kits with pilots in, and there is no pilot figure in this. So unless you're going to have this positioned on the ground with its landing gear down, you're going to have to put a pilot in it to make it fly. A small point as well is that the instructions don't annotate that you can make this into a flying pose. So I would presume that all you'd have to do for that is sort of glue the landing gear in place, but it might need a bit of alteration because it doesn't look to be quite right. So yeah, I'm not sure that would replace so easily. It would need a bit of modification. It doesn't look like it will quite fit over the top of that. So maybe this only has the option to have the landing gear in the down position, which is a bit of a shame. But on the whole, a very nice looking model and not too complicated to do. So to recap, we've got some nice grey moulded sprues with some excellent detail, being both recessed and raised as appropriate. Pilot's missing, cockpit details a little bit thin as well, so those aren't great plus points, but it's something that I can live with. Got a lovely sheet of decals from Cartograph, and there should be absolutely no issues with those, Cartograph being some of the best decal manufacturers out there. A pre-cut mask set, which is always a great addition. I'd love to see this included in more kits in the future. And a fairly easy to follow instruction booklet with some brilliant colour images. So, what do I think of this kit? Well, in total, it actually looks to be a really good kit. I'm not going to lie, I have looked this one up online, and it's actually a reboxing of a Hasegawa kit which was tooled back in 1995. So bearing in mind this is a 1995 tooling, which is almost as old as me, it's actually surprisingly good, and you can still hold a candle to it in comparison to other newer tooled model kits, particularly like the Airfix version, which in comparison is considerably younger. That extra edition of the masking sheet is pretty good too, but to be brutally honest, I'm not entirely sure that it is entirely worth the almost £20 that I paid for it, seeing as you can get other kits slightly cheaper. Yes, I know we're paying for those Cartograph decals and we're paying for that masking sheet as well, but I guess we're probably having to contemplate the import costs here in the UK as well, because this does say it was made in Japan, and those prices are usually passed on to the consumer. I have looked online, and RRP for this, or prices for this in other retailers, seem to be around the £20 mark, so this is actually slightly cheaper. So all in, not too bad. Probably a little bit expensive for what I like to pay. I mean, I don't like paying loads anyway, I like to always get a good deal. But for a 1/72 scale Hawker Hurricane with the stuff that we've seen, it's not too bad. Anyways, let me know what you think of this model kit down in the comments. Is this something that you would be interested in getting in the future? As always, shout out to my patrons and channel members for the extra support they give the channel. Take a look at the links in the description to find out more. If you enjoyed this video, please click that like button and subscribe so you never miss a modelling upload. Finally, the last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.